I first start with a clarification. So, what I teach my clients is the two foundational skills of communication, which is open and honest, and how we think about those two a little bit differently. So, honest is what you're communicating, what's coming out of your mouth, is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. So, that's the side of things that, hey, these are the numbers we got to hit. Here's why, getting clarity with that. And then the other side of it, which those in leadership positions, those as we continue to move up the organization. I have the numbers I could show you from our no honesty assessment, but we're not as good at the open side of things. And so, openness, I'm going to encourage listeners to think about this a little bit differently today. Openness, as we define it, is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else.
Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son, featuring the people you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author, wordsmith, and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give you power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences, perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple, folks. We want to create hope, helping other people every single day. Whatever your objective, successful people, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that not only enhance their lives, but many times, like my guest today, they pour into others. We've all heard the classic line, you cannot handle the truth. But is that true? We'll find out. My grandfather always said, if you tell a big enough lie and you tell the lie to the right people and they repeat it, the lie becomes the truth. We'll find out if that's fiction, or fact. Today's guest is going to open the honest conversation that she's been helping leaders simplify the communication and eliminate the divide between what exists within organizations. And also, she is the co-founder of the company known Honesty. Our guest will guide us as to how we can master communication, not only in our professional lives. We will also touch about the honest truth in our personal relationship, as well as the truth about life itself. In my opinion, our guest is one of our greatest assets. She is a true trailblazer, a visionary, and a champion of the honest truth. Today, let's welcome to the show author, consultant, wife. She's not a mother yet, unless she wants to tell us something good on the show, and we could be the first. Let me introduce you to Mrs. Grace Gavin. Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, Grace?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get into this topic with you and the guests listening. It's just, we're going to go all over the place, I think. And so I'm excited.
And believe it or not, we have a lot to go over, especially in the climate we live in, when we have to second guess or question what we're being told. Even though our eyes see one thing, our mind is believing something else. And what we're being told is not always the truth, but we're believing it is the truth. So let me ask you this. All right. I guess want to learn a little bit about you. We know that you have a best-selling book out there, Known Honesty. We'll talk about that. We know that you have six pillars to discovering the truth. But let's find out who you are. You're living in Michigan right now. You're a Detroit
Mhm.
Lions fan. Your team has did very well in the 2024 season. They're projected one day to be in the Super Bowl. But if I peel back the layers and I'm going to ask your favorite teacher to tell me about Grace, if I name that one favorite teacher that adored you,
Mm.
what would she tell us about you when you were about 16 or 17 years old?
Man, I love the way that you pose this because now I'm thinking that's very interesting. So I guess the way that I think that they would describe me is first of all, on the basics of things, I'm the last of eight kids. And so I think that that makes me a very observant individual. I'm always seeing how things in the room are moving and shaking, but also um, maybe not at 16 or 17, but certainly now I've gotten a lot better at using my voice and saying what I think and bringing out what I think needs to happen in the conversation in the room. And then the other part of that is not only was I the last of 8 kids, but I was also born and raised on a dairy farm. And so I know what hard work looks like. I know how to put in the hours and the dedication, and how to love something and put in all the effort into it. And I think that's a huge part of it. And then the other part is I'm a learner, I'm curious, always devouring a book and wanting to learn more from those around me because I know what I know, but there's a whole lot out there that I know that I don't know. So I think that's in a very quick snippet how they might describe me.
All right. And who was your favorite teacher?
So many, but I think I would have to say Mr. Miller in high school was our theater teacher, and I spent a lot of time on the stage, backstage, coordinating all of the things, and he just believed in kids in a way that he believed we could put on top-notch theater as high schoolers. Because he believed that, we really believed it and we made it happen. And that was amazing.
All right. I want to ask you, in your professional opinion, my grandfather only had an eighth grade education, and he was an avid reader. I didn't pick up my love for books until I had my last concussion. I live with a TBI. But when my grandfather said, and I did not know this became reality until I started following politics in the last 12 years, when he says that if you tell a big enough lie and you tell it to the right people and the right people repeat that lie, it becomes the truth. Is there truth in that statement or is it fact or fiction?
I don't know if you saw my face when you said this prior, but I was kind of like, "Ooh, that's very interesting." And I think that to those who don't know it, it becomes the truth or fact because they have no basis for where it begins. But I think for the person that either told the lie or has to live with the lie, they can try to believe into it as much as they can, but always in their heart or in their soul, wherever you want to take that, they know it's not the truth. And so that will eat away at them. And what I believe is that it's going to eat away at them in maybe ways that you won't see, but maybe they'll struggle with some form of addiction or they'll struggle with creating relationships or things like that because they're not in alignment. They're out there telling this big lie and having to live and believe into it that's simply not true. And I think that eats away at us as human beings more than we know.
All right. So I'm glad you clarified that for me. I wish I was had my grandfather here to explain to us why he even said that. But you have this wonderful book out there, which I'm going to repeat myself. Um, I have it on Audible. I've gifted it to my better half. I've also gifted it to a client. I'm the only one out of that scenario that has read your book and also listened to your book. Um, you and your partner, if you can tell us about that relationship before either one of you put this to pen and paper, is how did you guys get together to collaborate on this book? What was the initial conversation, and why was it important for this book to be out into the world?
Hmm. Yeah, and I love that you're sharing it with people, and I believe that people pick up the book when they need it or when they're ready for it. And so I gift it out to people too, and then they come back to me months later and said I finally read it or I started it or something like that. But for Ken and I, Ken Bogard, who is the co-author on the book with me, this had been really an idea in Ken's mind for a very long time, just seeing the dishonesty in the workplace and how that extended outside of the workplace as well. And then I started working with Ken about 6.5 years ago, which seems crazy to say now. And I, at the time, had previously been in a workplace that was really toxic, a lot of deceiving, a lot of lies, a lot of half-truths and facades going around. And I saw how much it destroyed the team. And then I started to see it in all the other workplaces that I had been before. And we really found this passion together within it. And then that still didn't entirely birth the book yet because we weren't ready. We were still learning from the leadership teams we were working with. still learning in our own lives and going through that. And so there's just a series of stories throughout that I think we weren't quite ready to write the book until we started in earnest on it about 4 years ago and putting that into place. But just knowing that there are so many people out there suffering in these workplaces and these relationships where it's a huge lack of clarity that leads them to think, am I the problem here? And maybe they're part of it, but they're not the whole issue. And it's really comes down to the communication between the two people that as human beings, that's what we have together. That's our ability to relate to one another is the words that we use. And so if we're not skilled in that, if we're not doing that well, then it's no surprise that the relationship then suffers because of it.
So, how do we, as employees or underlings, to upper management, how do we decipher the truth from the lie, and how do we get management to understand that honesty, there's profit in honesty in building a team?
Mm,
How do we
man.
distinguish the lie from the truth in management? Because I know within um, the management spectrum, there's a lot of pressure in order to produce numbers. And then when that information is recycled and recanted amongst employees, there seems to be a gray area between the communication of the original story to the actual conversations being had and the
Mm,
responsibilities of people receiving it. How do you get management to know honesty?
yeah. I first start with a clarification. So, what I teach my clients is the two foundational skills of communication, which is open and honest, and how we think about those two a little bit differently. So, honest is what you're communicating, what's coming out of your mouth, is being truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel. So, that's the side of things that, hey, these are the numbers we got to hit. Here's why, getting clarity with that. And then the other side of it, which those in leadership positions, those as we continue to move up the organization. I have the numbers I could show you from our no honesty assessment, but we're not as good at the open side of things. And so, openness, I'm going to encourage listeners to think about this a little bit differently today. Openness, as we define it, is listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for someone else. So, if you think about that for a moment, as a leader, as a manager of people, how often do you really do that for your people? How often are you putting aside any blocks, any walls, any, yeah, but they just don't understand your need, your objective to get those numbers met for just a moment to hear the person? Because if you're announcing any kind of change or you're pointing a direction for people, inevitably they have questions, hopefully, because that means that they're engaged. But they're not going to ask those questions if they don't think you're open to it. And so that's a huge part of it where then, as the employees or those underneath the management, then feel like they need to lie and they can't be honest because the person they're reporting to isn't open to them, isn't open to where they're going to fail because that's inevitable in our lives. We're not perfect human beings. Where they have questions, where they need some clarity, they're just going to, I'll say cover it up and not be as honest. And that chain just keeps following and following, following until things break apart and it becomes this big, huge mess. And we say, well, why didn't you just come to me when it was this small issue or it was just one question that you had? Well, because manager, dear person, I didn't feel like you would be open to it. I felt like you would judge me or put me on a pip or all of these things that, maybe that was the direction it was going to go anyways, but I didn't feel like I could bring that to you. And so when we don't have that really clear communication channel going back and forth, we miss so much. And I think that power dynamics plays a huge part in that, but we got to combat that and just be really clear in the kind of communication that we want going forward. Because you can certainly have that type of communication where people are lying to you. And I would say that sometimes ends up being the default in some companies.
How do you get companies to recognize that they need someone like you?
Oh man, if I had a perfect answer to that, Kevin, I would be I'd have a team and I'd have all the sales goals met and all of those things. But I think it comes from like any human learning that they have to go through enough pain with it that they recognize they need a change. And so a lot of times when clients come to me, they come to me because they have a huge mess on their hands where nobody's talking to each other. They're very siloed. And so that's I think it's a true but unfortunate part of the human experience is that we have to feel the pain of miscommunication, of turnover, of nobody wanting to stay, of having a terrible culture that then they recognize, all right, we got to change something. We got to do something different, make a different commitment here. And that's when they find me and talk to me.
Okay. Um, are people ready for the truth, both professionally and personally?
Mm. It depends on the person, but I think not a lot of the time because we're not used to it from people. We're used to it maybe at a 5% degree or sugar coated, but not in a real raw way that helps people a lot of the time. And it depends on the relationship. You know, you would hope that as you get closer to somebody, they're more real with you. But if it's just a new acquaintance, that comes almost as a shock to people because they expect that facade, that nicety, that fakeness first and not the reality from people.
Because I know in today's workplace, we've got this thing because within the last 2 years, everyone's getting canceled. Everyone's going to HR. HR is blooming. We're ultra sensitive into how we are receiving information or interpreting the information or conversations being happen. So people pull back, and we choose words carefully instead of saying exactly what needs to be said. I mean, I know in my day, my my grandfather always said, you know, something you got to be able to handle the truth. It may not always you may not always like it, may not always feel good, and it may not always be your version of the truth, but you got to sit and listen and stay in that space and understand that, you know, most of it is true. Even in my position, what I do as a host of my own podcast, I've always told people that you have a lot of critics, but a lot of times critics are not always wrong.
Mm.
Um, what has been the biggest obstacle you have with honesty and
Mm.
teaching people this?
Man, we could make a list. I think the one has to do maybe with a little bit of what you were asking. The first question, are people ready to handle the truth or ready for people to be honest? And I think that is one of the biggest barriers is I don't know that this person can handle this and I don't know if I can handle saying it because we're not used to hearing it from people like I was saying before. And I think that the biggest barrier I come across with clients all the time is they try to find, and I say this with love because I totally get where they're coming from, but try to find the loopholes in, well, should I always be 100% honest with my team? What if, you know, I think my wife's outfit is terrible. Should I be honest with that? Things like that, where it's, where can I find the loophole where I can step away from this and get a little bit more back in the comfort zone of saying the kind thing versus saying what needs to be said. And I think the more that you try to search for that and the more that I see my clients search for that, I just see them stepping away from it overall. Because I think about honesty as a skill set. The more that you can increase your ability to do it at work, in your personal life, in your relationships, the more that it spreads across all sectors of your life. So it's a skill to build there. But if we continue to step back from it, find excuses to not do it, well, that also spreads across everything. And not saying that everybody wants to be a liar, but we do want to live in a little bit more of the comfort zone, especially I think maybe you would agree with this, Kevin, but in the world that we live in now, a lot of it is focused on comfort and convenience and what's going to be quote unquote easiest for me that I don't have to feel uncomfortable anymore. And I think that's a real threat to human development as we continue to grow.
Well, I will tell you, I live in a world that when it comes to honesty, until the last 8 years, I felt comfortable in a world that I'm now uncomfortable in.
Mm.
Just because of the way the direction everything is going. Um, I don't trust my neighbors because I know how they feel because they wear signs. I don't feel comfortable, but they're still my neighbors. So I say hi. Do I mean it? that's another story to be told, depends on which day. Um, People have told me that, talking to Kevin, is that he doesn't have a filter. And am I being honest with myself? Because I'm learning to have a filter. I'm becoming a more professional listener and not so quick to respond to the question that's being presented at hand. Just like, do I really look nice in that dress? My response would be, my opinion really doesn't matter. If you feel comfortable in it, then wear the dress. Is that
Hmm.
a lie or is that the truth? Am I being honest?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it depends on the relationship that you have, but I think about it as for me, if I'm asking that question, for example, say to my husband, what am I really looking for there? And so when people ask me that question or ask me things around that, to me, as I'm listening to them, I want to know what's really behind that. And so, for example, if I'm asking that to my husband, maybe it's because of this day I don't feel the confidence in my body, or maybe I haven't been working out, and so that I know that I don't, say quote unquote look in the way that I want to look, but there's a deeper thing there. And so, kind of discovering that with people and going a layer deeper, I don't think we're used to, which I love what you said about being a professional listener because we do not do that well as human beings, even though we have two ears and only one mouth. We spend a lot of time focused on ourselves and what we're saying and what we want, and not really hearing what the other person is saying.
I'm glad you prefaced it that way because that listening is one part of the six pillars to that I've taken away in your book, and I know you have a structure. What I'd like to do right now is one, because people are going to want to know how they can get in touch with you, and I'm going to repeat this at the end of the show, and they're going to want to know how they can get your book and where they can get your book and how they can buy it. And I will tell you personally, I have read the book. I've listened to it on Audible. I have learned that I was not, have not been as honest as I thought I was. I've stopped saying that I'm having a great day or life is beautiful, I'm living my best life. When I pull back the curtain, that there's some things that I'm dealing with that's just I don't want to share with people, and I say that. So I've been a lot more honest. So Grace or Miss Gavin, I'm going to ask you because I'm a Southern boy. Can I call you Grace? Because I've been calling you Grace. I was taught different until my grandmother always taught me until someone gives you permission to call them anything different that shows up on a letter at their house, you call them by their name. So normally I would call you Mrs. Grace Gavin. So can I call you Grace?
Yes, please do. Mrs. Gavin is my mother-in-law, my grandmother, my grandmother-in-law. They're lovely ladies, but I don't think I'm quite the Mrs. on the level that they are. So Grace is just great for me.
All right. So how do we get in touch with you, Grace?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under Grace Gavin. You'll find it under No Honesty, KNOW, honesty.com. Can connect there. And then grace at nohonesty.com is my email too, if you want to reach out and just have a conversation about these things like we are right now with Kevin. And then the last thing, if you're interested in the book, it's available everywhere that books are sold, most popular obviously being Amazon and available on audio as well on Audible.
And I will tell you that both Grace and her co-author, her partner, did an excellent job on doing the Audible version on it. I was horrible on mine. Grace and her partner did an exceptional job. And if you go to Audible and get it, put it in your car, it's a great listen to. It's fun. And I want to get to um, the six lessons I've learned. And I don't know how you define them in your book, but start one. Where do we start? Where does your book? And what's the first lesson that it teaches you?
Yeah, so what we're talking about is really the second half of the book and what we teach, because we don't believe in, giving you all this information without something practical to take to it. What I really believe is that people need things to be simple, tangible, and implementable for to make them really happen. Then once we get to that point, we can go much deeper, but that's the first starting piece. And so our tangible, implementable side of things for no honesty are the six practices because like I mentioned before, being open, being honest, these are muscles. These are skills we're building. When we first started looking into this, we were clear on the dishonesty that was happening. I'll tell you, Kevin. We are like, yeah, obviously there's a lack of honesty in the world and in the workplace. That's really clear. The question is why? Why is that happening? And looking further into it, finding the lack of openness and just how pervasive and how much we're not talking about it, how much it affects people's ability to be honest. Like, oh, that's a huge problem. We got to talk about, start teaching people on. And I looked at that for myself and I was like, uh-oh, I got a big thing to learn here. I got to start working on this and working through it. So the six practices are the way of doing that throughout your day, throughout a week, throughout a month and a quarter, a year, that we really want to have people have this in their back pocket as a way to continue to build those skills. So the very first one that I teach my clients, and it's a little bit out of order from the book, but the first one I teach my clients is our Pursuit of Honesty assessment, which is currently free to take on our website. But the reason that we created the assessment is because as human beings, we love to measure things, have numbers to them. And so the assessment will give you the numbers on where you currently stand on your ability to be honest and to be open. And then we separate a little bit further into your personal life and your work life because for some individuals that's different. I know for me, I'm great at it in my professional life, excuse me. I'm teaching this, I'm talking about this all day long. I would hope that in my professional career I'm really great at it. Then on the personal side in my life, I got a little bit more work to do there. I've got some long-standing relationships that we're working on rebuilding, on communicating differently. And so I can be a little bit more targeted with where I need to build my skills to bring in that expertise. So that's the very first of the six practices is we got to know where we're starting from a baseline. And I think that I love, Kevin, that you shared that, you had this realization around how honest you were being. And what I would encourage people is when they take it, and my clients too, is wherever you land with your numbers, it's okay. We're just starting a baseline. We're just getting to know and whether those numbers are high, low. So I encourage people to not put a judgment on it. This is just where we're
Mhm.
starting from.
Uh, well, that's good. And the other is just becoming a good listener and being open to the truth. I know at work it's kind of hard to accept that um, you're in a good place or a bad place. I mean, there's never seems to be a middle because we all are in flight or fight mode. Keep my job or I'm going to get fired from my job. That's the reason why we have LinkedIn and all these other things. My resume, it's on speed dial all the time instead of having that comfort that my grandfather did when he worked one job and he retired from that job and he got a gold watch. Now we have in our society we're looking at, is AI going to replace me next year, or can they replace me? So understanding that truth. What is the second part of known honesty?
Yeah, the second practice is what we call the agreement. It's a simple, proven script to start out any conversation, ideally any relationship, but that doesn't always end up being the case with the people we know in our lives. It's just quite simply, hey, Kevin, will you be 100% honest with me? I promise I'll be 100% open to you, and then I'll be 100% honest with you, and I ask that you be 100% open to it. And that's just what we're striving for in every conversation, then moving forward, once we both agree to that. We have some expectations around it because a lot of times we walk into relationships to conversations and we just think we're starting off in the same place, but we're really not. For some of the people listening here today, you might hear open and honest, and that's a little bit of a pain point for you because the first time you had open and honest discussed in a professional setting is when maybe you were being fired or you were being demoted or something happened. And so for open and honest is very negative for you. For me, it's very positive. So we got to get clear on what is the kind of communication we want to have? What does it look like? And then we're on the same page. And that's what we're striving for every time. And now I say 100%, knowing that that's the goal and knowing the truth that we're humans and we will fall short of that. We just got to work towards that together, keeping each other accountable to it. So that's the second practice.
And I know on my end, and you can tell me if I'm doing this right or wrong, and I've learned a lot from your book. I always ask for permission to give
Mm.
my version of what I believe to be true when someone comes to me and they table a conversation and I'm listening and they says, well, what do you think? And I said, do I have your permission to tell you the truth? And I said, and I said, if it makes you uncomfortable, this is my disclaimer. Let me ask you a couple more questions. Let me get to really what the question really is versus what you just proposed to me. Is that a good place, or am I bailing out
No,
when I say that?
I think that's fantastic because one of my friends, and he's got a great newsletter that he just shared, Jason Pfeiffer of, I believe he's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, but he was talking about permission in one of his previous newsletters a couple weeks ago. And it's exactly what we're talking about with the agreement. It's fantastic, but you have to ask permission, give people permission, because a lot of times we just don't know. We don't know either where we're at in the relationship or where we're at in the conversation, let alone where the other person is at. Maybe I'm not ready to receive your tough feedback. And if you just come at me with it, then the likelihood I'm going to actually receive it, do anything with it, help it be productive and help me grow plummets very quickly. But if we can have that permission, that conversation going back and forth, well, then we've unlocked a whole world, a whole new level of the relationship. So I love that you asked that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I have a small circle of friends that we are locked with each other with the truth, because we all know that when we get our feedback, it is from a place of someone loves you. We may not always be comfortable with it, but it gives you something to think about when you walk away, because you know this person would never steer you wrong. I think this is when I read your book, and the reason why I gave it to people, I said at some point, people need to surround themselves with people that they trust, and let the people know that when they are in that circle, that they can be trusted too, that they're given the truth. Because I know people that can literally have a videotape of what they just said or what they did, and they will look at the videotape and tell you that it's a lie.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about government or anything. I'm talking about real people in life. So, I'm getting some free coaching along in here to make sure I'm doing life right. So the third part in your book, see, that was
Yeah.
honest. That was honest.
Yeah. I love it. It's so good too, because if I'll get to the next practice, but if I could just take us down a little rabbit hole,
Go
I've
ahead.
kind of gotten obsessed with um, these lying game shows. There's a couple on Netflix where the idea is you if you lie and you make it to the end, you win $1 million or you win $250,000 or something like that. And I'm watching it just from a fascinating perspective on what do people feel comfortable lying about, maybe skirting the truth, telling a little bit of truth in there, but not the full thing. And then seeing how people react to it. It's very interesting. I was just watching one the other day, where somebody lied about their profession. And, it seemed like a pretty believable lie just watching it, not being there in person with them.
Mhm.
But they were the first person to get voted out because some people were just, I don't trust it. There's something off there. I'm not sure what's going on. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't trust that person for some reason. Well, I really think it's because of that occupation lie. People can sense that. They know when we're lying, whether we're saying we're fine, we're all good, all things are happening, or we're telling a much bigger lie. It's like, something feels off here to me. And so I think that really comes into the next of the practices that I want to talk about, which is fake you. And fake you is the facade we project rather than being 100% honest. And so that could be, in that example, lying about your occupation. Could be when you go to networking events. When I first started going to networking events, I thought you had to be the perfect version of a business person.
Mhm.
um, and there's a lot of people still showing up that way to events, and I get it, but man, I did not make any good connections when I was doing that. And I did certainly not made any great sales, and I left feeling exhausted. And so again, fake you, thinking about how often is that showing up in your life and how much of your energy is it zapping from you that you could be using towards, I don't know, deepening your relationships, working on your business, working with your team, things like that, that it's a very real cost that we have when we're doing that.
Yeah. And that goes with the line, fake it until you make it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So be successful enough in order to tell the truth. You brought up, and I'm going to turn you onto a show. It's called Beast Games.
Beast
It's a
games.
young
Okay.
guy that became a internet sensation by, he's a millionaire, would walk around and I guess he does what I do. I study human behavior.
Mm,
And based on how people responded, they got a cash reward. So he's got 1,000 people up here who win $10 million and 1,000 people. And within the first couple hours, they eliminate 50 of the people. But when you watch what people will do for money,
mm,
and you watch people that based on religion and what they believe in character, whatever, of how they bend the truth to their benefit, and how the one person that basically just said, I'm not changing for anyone, and she was probably the weakest person there, and she was amongst the last 10 there. You need to watch the show. And ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance to see Beast Games, it's on Amazon Prime, and I don't get paid for doing this. It's a great experience of learning about you. And if you were
oh,
in a position to win $10 million dollars
mm-hmm.
and
Man,
what you would do,
I'm gonna
it's
put that
it's
on
it's
my
a
list.
yeah, you got to do it, especially with your book. It will be fun because you'll see a lot of different layers to what people do. Because I said that they say that every man has his price, and I said I've not been presented with the price that it would cost me to change my behavior on anything. So right now I don't have a price, but I would also say that for the right time and the right situation, I would entertain that conversation on my price. So let's go to the fourth layer. I'm enjoying this.
Man, I love that. And a good show recommendation too. The fourth one, which is we're gonna take a little bit of a corner turn, but we're gonna think about openness here and what really blocks us from being open. And it happens so quickly. And so what I want listeners to picture is a brick wall in your mind. And if you put up a brick wall between you and somebody else, what naturally happens to your conversation is that it's done, or it gets a lot more difficult if it doesn't completely encircle you. And so quite literally the fourth practice that I share with my clients is the wall, which we define as the divide you put between ourselves and others rather than being 100% open. And this happens to us really subconsciously a lot of the time, but we do it consciously as well, where somebody will say something we disagree with. Maybe we have a values difference with them. We don't like the action that they took. Their last idea was terrible, so why would I listen to this next idea? And we put up brick walls between ourselves and others all the time. And I think an important distinction here is that being open to somebody, listening to them without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause for just a moment, does not mean that you have to agree with them. So that's a really clear distinction. We think that in order to actually listen to somebody to hear what they're saying means that we condone that, we agree with that, we're okay with that. That is not the case. We still have our honesty back on the other side saying, I don't agree with you, or I see this differently, or let's take it in this direction, whatever it might be. But how often are we just putting up walls to the people around us because we don't agree with them, we don't like what they're saying, we just can't quite seem to see where they're coming from. It happens all the time. And when that happens, we lose a big piece of the picture because we're surrounded by people all the time. And so if we put up a brick wall on one side and then on the other side and then in front of us and then behind us, pretty soon we end up feeling isolated and lonely, which happens to be a huge public health epidemic now in the US. I believe it was 2023 that the U.S. Surgeon General declared as a public health epidemic, loneliness and isolation because of how much it quickly leads to premature death and issues. I think it's equivalent to about a pack of cigarettes a day, smoking that when you feel lonely and isolated from people. Well, consider where are you putting up the wall that's leading to that.
Yeah, that's funny because COVID brought out the truth in all of us. I
Mm,
mean, you think about it. We get up every single day, we go out, and for 8 or 42 hours a week, or sometimes 60 hours a week, we entertain and we show up as Kevin or Grace, and then we come home, and then we show up as the provider for great life and whatever, fall asleep on the couch, and we go to our little kids' games and we sit there and we cheer and whatever. But when you're locked down 24/7 in a room with someone, and you look over at your partner and says, "I didn't even know you ever did this." I didn't know you were like this. Where you looked at your kids and going, oh, my kids are not as perfect as I thought they were. I always say that, people that during COVID found out what child care was really like, take care of your own damn kids. And, and it drove them crazy. And then the other thing is, when I looked up the fact that people were sneaking out in order to buy alcohol, I'm going to people realize that they had a problem they didn't.
Mm.
It's like, what happens to us when we discover our own truth? Do we live in a constant state of denial, or are we in a fixed situation where we call people like you?
Hmm.
I love human behavior.
Yeah, it's fascinating. A lot of times I see what's happening to me with the wall is just it's a rejection of the reality that we live in. I reject that this person in my life thinks differently than I do, or I reject that my team sees this differently. And so I'm just not going to listen to it. I'm not going to absorb it and take it in and process that and do what I need to do with that. I'm just simply going to reject it. And it happens for so many different reasons. A lot of times I find that um, I believe it was, I think he's still alive, but his name is Sadhguru, and he's I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe he is an Indian Buddhist, or at least a guru, I'm sure. So if somebody out there wants to correct me listening to this, it'd be fantastic. But Sadhguru said the walls of self-protection that we build for today become the walls of self-imprisonment for tomorrow. And so just consider, where are you trying to protect yourself? But then that becomes a rule and a very hard, stuck way of living that then leaves you feeling stuck, because it happens all the time.
That's a great quote. I like that. I'm gonna have to publicly say I'm gonna steal that one from you.
It's good. I share it with a lot of my clients and I love that one. But just, man, we do it all the time to people. I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else, but I try to catch myself, and the
I'm
goal
I'm
there
so
is in the moment.
I'm so glad you said that. I am
Yeah.
so glad you said that because I'm thinking myself. I want to know where Grace's wall is. Do you have a wall?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Give
A
us
lot of
one. Give
oh,
us one. And believe it or not, you can ask me the same thing.
yeah. I would love to hear from you too. Mine happens when, let's see, what's a good one? So when anybody approaches me with an idea different than my own, or a change to ideas. And so this happens all the time between Ken and I, my co-author. He'll come up with an idea, and my immediate base reaction is, nope, let's just keep doing what we're doing. Well, that doesn't work out very well in business, as you might imagine. If we just kept doing what we were doing and doing what we were doing, eventually at some point, we would be out of the game because we wouldn't be innovating and moving with where people are at and meeting the needs of the time. And so we talk about that regularly, and I recognize it where he says, "Hey, I got an idea." And I'm like, "Okay, 1 second. Let me put my mind in the right frame. All right, what you got?" And then we go from there. So that's one of mine.
All right. And it's funny you say that because when I started my company, RMK Productions, I had the same wall until I realized I needed to say yes and I
Mm,
put into place that if you had, say for example, you came to me and you were part of the team because I don't have employees, all they're teammates. I'm used to playing on a team. There are 5 requirements to every conversation we have. If it meets the 5 conversations, then we have a conversation. But the key thing is, if you present it, you have to take ownership and
mm,
how we want to reward you outside of what your additional pay is. If it's profitable, we'll give you 10% of the gross revenue that it generates. So we have the yes and. But my wall is, and I say I'm allergic to people that are not kind to other people.
mm,
And so what I'm learning is again what we ask all the time from little kids. Why? What little kids say. All right, why am I feeling this way? What about this person that I don't know is bringing them to this point that they're carrying around this negative energy and that they're sharing it with anyone that comes in their space? I say good morning to every single person that passes me. And a lot of times people will look at me and they'll walk right past me, even though they didn't hear me. I will open the door for people, and people will walk through the door and never say thank you. And it used to be the point that I thought it was because when they looked at me, they saw something not good instead of the good that I was doing. So the decision I had to make is either build that wall and close off the people that to all people, or allow people to walk through and let me take one brick at a time and build a new wall that everyone can see what beautiful building I have built. If you ever see me on stage, I carry a brick on stage. And I always say the foundation of any change is built by one brick.
Mhm.
And one brick in order to build a skyscraper has to have a firm foundation. So that's the reason why I carry a brick.
I love that. Yeah, how do we do it differently and help people through that change? And what we're really doing is helping people build new neural pathways. And so we have the neuroplasticity, that's the beauty of being human, that we can do things differently, we can change things in our brain, but we have to make that active choice to do that. Otherwise, we just fall into the deeply rooted path that was already there before because it's quote unquote easier. Is it easier to have shallow relationships, to not go deep with people? On one hand, yes, but it also feels leaves us feeling lonely and isolated, and that's really hard too. So which choice are we going to make? Are we going to make those new pathways work on that? Or are we going to stay stuck where we were?
And that's for our listeners, that's something you have to address yourself. Neither Grace or myself can fix that for you. So if you have more questions than answers, sit with yourself and ask those questions and look in the mirror, because the only time that you're ever going to be honest with yourself, if you can convince that person that's looking back at you that the lie you told is the truth, unless
Mm,
it's actually the truth. So let's go to number 5. I'm
yeah.
enjoying this.
Yeah, it's good. So the last two I think about as really as a self-awareness. They're all self-awareness really, but these ones are specifically leader focused. So the fifth one is the still. And what it is, it's a one-page PDF and it's a snapshot of where your life is right now. And I take clients through a series of different categories, and this is free to find on our website too. If you go to nohonesty.com/the-still, you'll find it. It's also in one of our blogs under I believe it's the reflective practice for fast-paced leaders. So there's a couple different ways to find it. But what it really gives us leaders who are moving so fast in a world that just seems to never stop is just 10 minutes with ourselves to consider where are we really at right now in a category in our life. And so there's a series of ones that we've picked out, pretty broad general ones, but you can add more for yourself. But things like friendship, career/profession, uh, romantic, current living conditions, things like that, finances. And we're just answering, am I content or discontent? And then going a little bit deeper and saying, why? Why am I content here? Why am I discontent here? What's really important there that I find for leaders is that you got to be aware of these things in your own life because they are affecting how you show up in your leadership. And so if you're content in a bunch of areas, that's fantastic. I love that for you. It's showing up in your leadership. And if you're discontent in a whole bunch of areas, even if they're not their professional sphere ones, I promise you they're showing up in how you lead people. And so we need to be aware of that too. And again, not putting any judgment on ourselves, but just having that awareness because so many leaders that I talk to, they're like, wow, I had no idea how content I was, or I had no idea how discontent I was, or how much I was beating myself up for all of these things. And I just need to be okay with where I'm at and not have all of that, what we call mental head trash going on. Just, okay, this is where I'm at and this is what I have. And so that's the fifth practice is the still.
All right. And this still leads to the 6th practice. Do we want to talk about that, or do we want to actually have people hire you instead of using this thing? Because I know that most corporations will look at this and go, Kevin finally put out something that I can use and try to interpret what little bit we taught them here versus the actual practice, part of the reason that I wanted to do this because I've worked for a lot of corporations, which I said when I retired early on, and then I took this president position, I would never work for another corporation, is because a lot of things that you teach in this, they didn't care about their people, they cared about the bottom line. and people could be recycled. All right, get a new version and start all over. But corporations don't realize that the average onboarding of a new employee is costing $4,000 or $5,000, and that person sits there for 4 or 5 months and builds up enough in order for the resume to look good. They never get a return on the investment. And the other thing is corporations are throwing away good employees and not finding value in an employee. If an employee doesn't fit in this current position, can you develop that employee to a better position where that employee has value to it? But if corporations only look as a human being, as an access, that mentality becomes a liability for that corporation. I actually sound like I'm smart. I hope I don't depress you with pretending to be something that I'm not. Is that a truth or is that a lie?
I think you are absolutely right, and it's why I end up working with a lot of small businesses rather than large corporate size organizations because I think small business has this in spades against large corporations, and that is that they recognize the value of their people and they invest in them. Sometimes I think to more of a degree on a percentage basis than a large corporation does, because if you're not developing your people, your business is not developing. And if you're not investing in them, well, are you really investing in your business? Because right now, as of the world that we live in, I know AI and all the robots and all that conversation's coming, and I don't know, that'll be an interesting conversation when we get there. But right now, your people are your biggest asset. Yes, probably your biggest cost too, but they're your biggest asset. If you have people that are willing to put in the work, learn and grow beside you, why would you not invest in that? And so that's why there are corporations, there are small businesses that I talk to, but it's primarily small business. And why I'm happy doing things like this to make it available as much as I can as a free resource, because I think about it as if everybody's working on this, then I'm happy. And if you want to pay me to come work with your team and do it, great, I'm also happy. But how do we just continue this work for individuals? And I think about it as with my clients. Look, you can do it on your own, and it's like walking to your destination. You'll still get there. It might hurt a little bit more. It might take a little bit longer, certainly. Or you work with me, and it's like hopping on the train or the bus to get there. We're getting there faster. It's a little bit less painful for you, and we're getting results quicker. But either way, we're getting to the destination as long as you and your team are dedicated to going there. So that's the way that I look at it. So I'm more than happy to share the practices, and then the last one, to share that with people too.
All right. So I'm not going to give away the whole book, but I am going to say my sole purpose in doing this interview is because one, Grace is an exceptional human being. She's very passionate about what she is doing. She's committed along with her partner. The other thing, the reason why I wanted to do this, because you said small businesses. The reason why small businesses are thriving is because the entrepreneurial spirit is still alive as a human being. They see profit in humanity where people are sacrificing humanity for profit. And so that's the reason why big companies. I would suggest that anyone that has a startup company, anyone that's been in business 3 years and wants to thrive in this business and wants to create a culture to where that people show up to work wanting you to be successful, and you as management or ownership show up to work wanting your people to be successful, it's a united front. And if you're honest with everyone from day one, the end results is crazy. Right now, this podcast allows you to have access. We're giving you the content for free. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you is to make the investment either yearly, quarterly, however you do it. In order to have access to it, how to do it, I suggest the information you're about to get from Grace right now, you take full advantage of it. Put her on your calendar, bring her team in, buy copies of this book to every member of your management team as well as your employees. All right. Give them 30 days to read it and then meet as a collective and go over the conversation of at least one lesson. I'm not going to say all 6 lessons that you learned and why, and have an open and honest conversation. And the other thing that I want to tell management, ask yourself, would your team or your employees take a bullet for you?
Mm.
And if the answer would be yes, that they will protect you from all, then that tells you what type of management you are. And if they say no, then despite of where the source came from or what the conversation, there's some things that you need to work with and buy this book and contact Grace Gavin and her partner, listen to it till you understand it and take notes while you're reading it.
Mm.
All right.
I love it. You said all that needed to be said, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Grace. Well, we've had other conversations outside of this. I'm
Yeah.
so excited to hear this. And like I said, this show is about the secrets of successful people, not talking about their bank accounts. But I'm going to ask you because every successful person has a group, either one, three, four, or maybe a dozen. I came up with 12 on my list, and the 12th one was a lie, which I'm working on. So no honesty, because I don't get enough sleep. And that was one of the things that I teach people that how important rest is. And I realized that I burn the candle at both ends and try to light it in the middle. And so I am consciously making sure that I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep. I haven't made it to 8, but it's something I work on every single day. And that's only my own truth. So I'm going to find out how honest you are. Let's talk about distractions. What distracts you?
Mm. I, the first most obvious one is my phone and social media. So I've removed all social media from my phone, but even that, I'm pretty good about all of them except for LinkedIn because that feels a little bit business specific to me. So that's the very quick surface level one is those literal notifications and the distractions that happen very quickly. But then I think to me, my biggest distraction that gets me way more often than I'd like is worry of the future of how is this going to look? What is this going to look like? What are we going to do? All of those things that distract me very, very quickly and then leave me feeling hopeless at points. And that's not a way that I want to feel. That's not a way that I want to operate. But that distraction, I'm constantly working on letting go of it, letting it be much more quickly, saying my prayers and saying, help me take this worry from me, direct the way that I can let go of it more quickly. But it's really hard sometimes.
Do you mind? Do I have permission to give you a little? I'm a little older than you.
I would love it.
A little food for thought.
Yeah.
Remember this: control the things you have control over. If you can't
Hmm.
control, they don't matter. All
Hmm.
right. If people hate you, they disagree with you, let them. All right. Just go on about your life.
Yeah.
All right.
That
That's me
is, I
passing
work
down.
towards that. I appreciate
All right.
that.
Do you journal?
I do. I used to be much better about doing it every day. Now it's maybe once a week.
All right. Do you believe in delayed gratification or immediate gratification and why?
I'm a generation of instant gratification. I believe in delayed gratification, but it is so much harder to do. So I believe in it, but I'm not good at it.
All right. How do we get in touch with you and how do we buy your book?
Yeah. LinkedIn, you can look me up under Grace Gavin, send me a DM there. Even though I just said I get distracted by social media. If you don't want to distract me there, send an email to grace@nohonesty.com. That's KNOW, again, little play on words there. And then nohonesty.com for all the information that we've talked about today, even more things that we didn't get to go into, is the best way. And then as far as looking for the book, like I said before, Amazon's the quickest way to get it, but special for listeners of this show, Kevin. I don't even know if I shared this with you prior, but this is something new my team is doing. As a thank you for listening and getting to the end of this. If you go to nohonesty.com/podcast, there will be a special discount, 40% discount on the book for anybody who wants to get it there. So again, that's KNOW honesty.com/podcast for a 40% discount on the book because we just want on people's hands, helping people in their lives, getting their relationships better and stronger cultures that make a stronger world a better place to live.
All right. All right. I am not going to end the show because, excuse me, you just brought up something. I never want anyone to be a guest on the show that will walk away and saying, I wish I could have. I wish he had asked me. I wish I had said this. Is there anything that you want people to take away that I didn't table in the conversation that you would like to bring up right now?
Mm, I appreciate you asking that. I think we covered it all. I just want to reiterate again to people that don't expect perfection out of yourself. This is a journey to working towards being more open, being more honest every single day. And so long as you're on that journey and committed to it, that's what's most important in this life.
All right. So one more time, I'm going to ask the third time. How do we get in touch with you? How do we buy your book? All right.
Yeah.
And how do we hire you?
Yeah. Well, you can send that right to my email. Any questions, any conversations, any curiosities, grace@nohonesty.com, and then special 40% discount for those listening, nohonesty.com/podcast. And if you don't want to deal with that, you can just go on Amazon, but that's where you can
All
get
right.
the book.
What is your secrets to your success?
The secret to my success, I think, would be not chasing success.
That was sweet. Just simple and sweet. Thought you were going to say honest. I was trying to predict what you're going to say. Grace, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show. 99.9% of the people that show up in the show, I ask this one question. I'm going to add you to my list of 100 people that I've been impressed by and their secrets to their success. But I'm going to ask you this one question. And the reason why I'm asking you this question, because something strange has happened to me within going into my fourth year of doing this podcast. I've had, I tell people, everyone wants to say subscribe, like, and follow. And I will say, I would love for you to subscribe, like, and follow or comment, but I only surround myself with people that have a high call to action. If you're a person that's actively trying to make a difference in the world that wants to help people, then I ask you to subscribe, um, follow, and make comments. All of my circle of friends are high valued people. They don't drive by an accident, they stop to help. I've
Mm.
had six people to this day that have had five people. And the reason why I say six, because one has helped two of my guests out when they've answered this question. If you had one ask, ASK, one dream that could come true, something that will make a difference, not only in your life, but in everyone else's life. And someone listening to this podcast could make that dream come true. What would your ask be?
You got me
Aside.
stumped. This is so good, but I think my ask would be if I could get No Honesty, the book, in the hands of Dr. Brene Brown, that would be that would be the coolest thing ever.
All right, do you know there's more than one Dr. Brown listed out there? You want to be more specific exactly which Dr. Renee Brown you want to talk to?
Yes, the she is written Atlas of the Heart. I thought it was just me. She's got the podcast. Um she's one of the biggest people that I look to in this world of things. Even beyond just the work that I do, but just how to be a good human out in the world because sometimes it feels difficult. So Dr. Brene Brown, she has the Brene Brown Research and Education Group or something like that. So I think that's as specific as I can get it.
All right. Well, we're going to see if we can make that happen. All right. So, to my listeners, and new listeners and fans and people that follow and subscribe and make comments, I want to remind you to grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold you accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff. To exist, you must show up more. Understand the power of your words. This is a note from me, your mindset messenger. We've covered a lot of information. If you like what you've heard, go to our YouTube page at RMK Productions and Network. And like I said, if you're one of those high call to action people, like, subscribe, follow, and comment. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, I want to thank Corey Portier, a good friend of mine, for introducing me to Grace. He has been a wealth of information. He has been a good friend and a good, strong supporter of my show, and I support his endeavors. And by the way, Grace, you should set up and do. I don't know if you've done your Blue Talk yet, or
This week.
all right. Well, congratulations. Corey has a great platform. The other thing, Grace, I want to say this, and I'll say this on air. 2026, December 10th is a 6-day cruise. We are going to be raising money for sickle cell anemia. We have the Royal Caribbean cruise line. We are in the process of putting this together. I'm going to have a week of education. I'm going to have some of the biggest bands and groups of the 90, like Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, Ohio Player, Zap, Cool in the Gang, just to name some few conversations I've had that will be on that ship. I'm going to have a week of education. I would love to have you come on and do a workshop on known honesty and introduce your project live to a couple of friends. So keep that in mind. The reason why I'm putting this on tape, so it'll be out there. So when your friends watch it, they can say, are you going to go do the cruise? That is December 6th, 2026. It'll be an RMK production along with the Kiera Hope Foundation for raising money for sickle cell. So just think about that. You don't have to answer yes or no yet, but to be honest, I'm hoping you say yes. All right. So with that said, my grandfather always said that when you get to a point in life that you can help someone, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we're out and we'll fade the block. Thank you, Miss Grace Gavin.